This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, truth seekers and true crime junkies. This is Nanette with another episode of the Hunt for the Zodiac. I'm sorry. It's going to be one of those mornings. It's been 2 weeks since I've actually done this, and I'm feeling a little scatterbrained at this point. But hit the road, Jack. The Hunt for the Zodiac. Finding the Zodiac. Sorry. Oh my God. Can we just start over one? This is horrible. or block it out. Whatever we have to do. Anyways, yes, I had taken the last couple weeks off after pre-recording last week. You guys did not see me live. I was in Texas watching my son graduate from the Air Force. So our newest airman, I just wanted to give a shout out to Bo Snyder. Yay. I'm very excited about that. We did leave off with the handwriting examination on the 1963 letter in the JFK and Oswald case. And this week, I told you guys we were going to have a guest on. I just want to revisit this letter real quick. So we're going to put that up on the screen so everybody can see what we're about to talk about. This letter was sent on December 3rd of 1963 following the assassination of JFK, and then subsequently Jack Ruby had shot Lee Harvey Oswald following the events, I think within a couple days. I'm not the big history person. This is why I love our guest today and potentially another guest we're going to see next week, because I'm really kind of catching up on a lot of this stuff. And the interesting part that I wanted to add from 2 weeks ago when I aired is that I had mentioned I had watched the movie called The Irishman and was kind of getting a little bit up to date in this JFK Hoffa thing. These are certainly things they don't teach you in politics or in school when you're taking your history courses, but I think they're very important, like I said before, for everybody to know where we came from, how we got here, and who's still running our country and what they may or may not be up to. Anyways, I would like to introduce at this point in time, I'm sorry, I said I'd go over that letter. The letter states Oswald case -- check either Howard or Spencer, perhaps Howard Spencer, and link Ruby. And there's a backwards arrow. I'm not sure if you can actually see that, but when it's blown up, the arrow is actually going backwards from the name Oswald, pointing towards Ruby, obviously being Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald. And I threw around some ideas about Howard being E. Howard Hunt, or I know that there's an individual with the last name of Spencer that our guest today is going to talk about. So this letter being sent to the Dallas Police Department in Dallas, Texas, made me wonder why the Zodiac, before he was the Zodiac, had any information that he felt was pertinent to the case, at least enough so to have purchased a postcard and to mail that message to the police department. So with no further ado, let's bring in Harriette Sucher.
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. I'm happy to, talk about this letter, because this was me like something that I was starting to get into as really we knew what we were going through with the Zodiac cases, but I at the time had got involved with the JFK portion of people that were going through the same thing we were. And so I tossed the letter over to you, and you did an examination. You said, my God, 100%. That is, according to my examination abilities and profession, that's Jack's, letter. So,
well, I tried to keep it out of the way. And I know that when Dennis Kaufman had initially told me that Jack was friends with Lyndon B. Johnson, that he hunted on his ranch, and that he was given a wedding invitation to his marriage, I told him, let's just keep that stuff to the side. I mean, that just
was
sounds
like that too.
it's too sensational. I mean, I'm already in deep water when I'm combining some of these cases, because people literally think, what do you want to do, Nanette? Combine them all? I'm like, no, just the ones with the communication. And I think that everybody else should be looking at all the other cases that surround it. So, yep, it is very astonishing to even believe or think that we're even messing around with politics or the likes of the JFK stuff. But lo and behold, here we are. So you have ciphered or used what you said was a grill cipher, correct?
Well, no, it's actually at the time I knew about what a grill cipher might be, but this is where I had got my feet wet into trying to do something like Lauren Swearing In, who came into our lives, said, well, you can anagram things on the envelopes or the postcards. And he was the one coming up with the things that we were getting nervous about: LBJ, CIA, and JFK related things.
MK Ultra, yes, all of that stuff.
So I said, well, let me see what I can do with this. And this was a new adventure for me to go off and really try.
He did really kind of pick and choose the letters that he wanted to cipher, and his usually actually had a code in them. So, or not a code, a cipher, a pictogram, if you will, because it was symbols. It wasn't actual letters or numbers or things like that. We were seeing all different kinds of stuff in there, and he chose those ones to actually cipher. And his method seemed to be very sound. All the letters were used, and it really took him a very short period of time. He started, I think, on the 340 cipher, and then when he came to me, he said that he believed that he had ciphered a message, and the only suspect name that fit into that message was Jack W. Terrence Jr. So I thought that was extremely interesting. I gave him some time. I started to fill him in about Jack. I hooked you up with him so that you guys could talk about what you knew about ciphering and Jack's coding and stuff. And you both came out with some very interesting messages, albeit one's on one path, one's on the other, but they really kind of connect and wrap themselves around each other.
Well, what I call doing even something like this is, because now I learned more about the grill cipher method that he definitely was using, 2 years later. But this is what I call being around or skirting around the bullseye. And I found that I was getting really close to the core of what he's trying to talk about during 1963. And then
I wonder at this point in time too, if obviously we know that he is between addresses at the end of 63. He's coming from California, going to Texas, and we see that there's no address left up there. I mean, that's kind of one of the items the Zodiac did, but then in some cases he literally say no address. So I found that interesting.
Well, what I learned about that is when he says no address, and that's going to get into the Zodiac letters. When I did the grill cipher portions of that, I took out the address at the top where it said, dear editor or dear so-and-so, that's the address. And then it always fit, the 24 lines fit right down there. And then was able to pick out. So
this one though, you're saying is a bit different. Right.
This is where, in my opinion, because we covered the Black Dahlia, I know you covered it a lot and covered other things, where he's it's a transitional phase, because I'm finding that he was in the Get Hoffa squad, but there were people that were trying to find out who's really going to try to kill the president, and if they do, then it's going to go into a transitional phase, and this is when it had happened. So
this is what piqued my interest last week when I asked you to be a guest this week, is that I informed you I had just watched the movie The Irishman, and then you tell me what you've been ciphering and decoding in this stuff, and I about hit the floor.
He was in the Get Hoffa squad.
Due to that, I am now trying to brush myself up on Watergate so that when we talk about it, I have some idea of what's going on.
Well, we won't get too far ahead, but I can tell you later ones, Watergate was a great, even though it was painful for a lot of people to go through, it was a great smokescreen. because
Yes.
that's the core of where they're really finding ways and trying to bring down all kinds of people that were connected to in the end connected to who was killing JFK. And
Gotcha.
so
So
that
what
was
did
a
you
big
find
push.
in this letter? What method did you use?
I just used anagramming, you know, but mostly just the key words like check either Howard or Spencer. Well, to give our guests some more education as to what I was doing between 2014 and 2015, I was going to JFK conferences and meeting people that knew Lee Harvey Oswald, meeting people who were in the CIA, who were supposed to be retired, and were telling me about how they knew that Oswald had a piqued interest into a movie that was where the person was wearing a Spencer, and it's in the Scarlet Pimpernel, I think that's what it's called. And so Lee Oswald had an interest in getting into cloak and dagger things since a kid. So then he gets, from what I understand, okay, Howard came up as I think the link to E. Howard Hunt.
That's what I was
And,
wondering, because I know that
yeah.
Loringham's solve states that E. Howard Hunt is part of the solve. So that's interesting. Yes.
Well, it's saying in this. Let me just read a portion of it. So says starting with the envelope. This is part of what I sent to you, and you got 3 pages because I just found it was fascinating. I got 3 pages of information out of this. So I sent this to you October 18th, 2015. It says starting with the envelope, Lancaster stood out. So I did Lancaster JFK search and found a book and a movie called Days in May. And it says both book and the film were based on events of the early 1960s era and a future 1974 coup d'etat, Cold War troubles, treaties, missiles, etc. in the Pentagon. Kennedy read the book and knew about the filming, believed it could actually happen, so told Hollywood they could film outside the White House and he'd visit Hyannisport for a weekend. Among realism was General Walker had resigned, and JFK administration was known for indoctrinating his military like a false prophet. That's what I was learning at the JFK conferences. Anyways, it just goes on and on that there was planning in Hollywood to do a movie of something like an assassination and a coup d'etat during JFK's presidency.
Wow.
And that had to do with, I believe it was Burt Lancaster. So
that brings us back to, again, we're having this media connection to things, just like the Manchurian Candidate actually having been written in a movie made about something that was written when nobody should have known about it. So how did this author get that information? Again, we see somebody with some inside
Kennedy connections to Hollywood. And so, then it goes on because the name of Spencer, it says Spencer Tracy had definite connections to the Kennedys. He was Catholic. And so there was a movie that was done. And they say that this movie starring Spencer Tracy was testing the waters to see if a Catholic could get into the White House. So, he's Jack in his world, I think, is saying, check the Hollywood connections.
I've said that all along without really knowing anything, is that there is a definite media connection here. They've made lots and lots of money off of these crimes. They're all unsolved, and we can't seem to get any answers. And all of the information has gone missing in the police departments. What is going on here?
It's gone missing. That's what I'm finding and what I do. It gone missing for you to look at. Like if you were to read a newspaper right now, you would think you're reading about missing stuff. But if you know how to pick out where the clues and things are, then the information seems to be embedded.
Exactly. And, I do find that. You would have to read 8 to 10 books on one subject in order to pull one good book of information out of it, because of all of the deflection and the dissemination and the untruths and the, oh gosh, it's horrendous. All right. So back to this letter. Sorry. Our tangent.
The letter, I'm looking at it too. So here's the interesting thing about Spencer Tracy. Just a really, it's what caught my attention. He's born into a wealthy missionary parents and Catholic family. and was a communist fighter, like Senator McCarthy, who was with Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy, that was part of the Get Hoffa squad there.
And you said he's Irish. I'm sorry, I wasn't
yeah,
sure.
Irish. Spencer Tracy, yeah, and they're the Irish wealthy connections. And then you got let's see. Oh my God, there's so much in here. I was looking and said, this is just amazing to get all these information. So we'll fast forward to Johnny Rosselli, who's one of the shooters that Jack says is
well,
one of the
I'm more or less interested in knowing what the letter actually decodes. We can actually cover all of the other outside information, but
that's where it
I
gets
want
into.
to. Yeah,
because Johnny Rosselli is the Hollywood connection at the time. He's the Hollywood gangster to the mob, to Hoffa, and he's also going to help. He didn't really want to, but help bring down the Kennedys. So I think that's where this is saying that.
So what does this letter yield for us as listeners? I have some of your information, and I'm going to have, like I said, I'm going to have it put up intermittently as we go through these pages so people can actually read what you've written. But the method that you used on this, you said, was basic anagramming. So you're taking all of these letters
and anagramming like the names, where he's saying check Howard or Spencer, or perhaps Howard Spencer, and then it says a link Ruby to Oswald. He's telling you to look at these names, and you're going to find amazing links as to who was there really bringing down JFK.
So does E. Howard Hunt have a connection with the Spencer Tracy?
Yeah, he was. He's. Let's see. Let's read this. Well, anyways, yeah, E. Howard Hunt was there as one of the. He was trying to see who was going to be there shooting the Kennedys. He was not there shooting. A lot of people said that he's the one who shot Kennedy. No,
I had a response last week. I'm sorry to interject here, but from somebody had left a reply to the JFK stuff last week that said who was at both places, what one person was at both places. $50,000 if I knew the answer. So do you know what they're talking about?
Well, I know that who was at both places was Eugene Hale Brading, and I think it's mentioned in this somehow, the connection.
Okay.
So, but it was also Morales. Morales was a name.
He was at both? But yeah. So when they're saying both places, what do they mean both places?
Well, both places to try to bring down a Kennedy. So both places was Dallas, and then the other place, Eugene Hale Brading. A lot of researchers came up with the information that he was definitely also there at the area where they shot Bobby Kennedy.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, he was there. He's the only one that seemed to live on. All the other people that were there that Jack and his crew found, they did not live on. They found ways to kill them, to poison them, to bring them down. And but as far as Brading, I have to tell you, and a lot of people are probably not going to want to hear this, but it looks like if you lived on after things like this, it's because you turned and ratted out all kinds of other people and paid your debt back to society that way, and just probably helped assassinate a number of other people. So
now that makes a lot of sense, because I feel like these communications, and when we get to the end of them, when Jack has made amends with his life, that he's saying, leave me alone, I have information. That information is a bomb. It's sitting in closets. It's waiting all over California. So he was literally threatening somebody to leave him alone. In the Atlanta, Georgia County child killer case, we see stop the forced busing, stop the forced killing, basically. So again, he is saying that politicians are running scared, stop the kill. I don't want to kill anymore, basically. So he's one of those people, and maybe he kept them at bay with this information.
That is so coincidental. This is why we get along. We do things and we don't know that there's other things going on during that day or the day before. Just wait until I tell you about what I found out yesterday in decoding a missive that apparently goes right to where he's saying that there's going to be a future cold case in a 1974 cold case that of evidence that I'm working on that is going to include, for some reason, the 1979 Atlanta letter.
Wow. Wow.
And so he's working with the huge crew then. They're still, this is at the time where they're making loose ends being tied up to really finally bring down Hoffa and Giancana. And that's all.
When we're going to see that, actually, we're going to see, I think
Yeah.
we see that through your solves. Who's going to be next? Who is on the list? Who's being taken out? What's being done? So, all right. So back to this letter. I know we keep getting, this is you can go down a huge rabbit hole with JFK. So I'm going to flip to the next page so that people can see.
Well, we're in that rabbit hole, but it's phrased out into all kinds of things that happen in the future, which end up going back down into that rabbit hole.
Yes.
And that's what I find.
Well, let's just finish with what you found from this letter.
Okay, so there was a name that I brought up in here that I found a connection to Lawrence Howard. You know, because we're trying to find out all the names. What could Howard means be so important to JFK? So Lawrence Howard, he is known as a big link in the chain to David Ferry, Oswald Traficante, and as per another member of Interpin, Lauren Hall. And so he is suspected as being one of the shooters at Dealey Plaza, since he is now linked to David Ferry and Oswald and Jim Garrison in 1967, linked to the two to Jack Ruby. Like the letter note says, link Ruby, arrow, or garrote. I found that as a garrote with the handle.
The Garrett, yes, absolutely. So, we see those missives all the time.
So, and then it says to Oswald, and then I put, or is it a sideways Jesuit cross of Lorraine, heraldry symbol for Slovakia, and Oswald has ties to the Jesuits in various ways. So there's a lot of interpretations going on there, but it keeps on coming up with the same things. So Jack is saying this is what they knew. They noticed these symbols could mean certain things, and it keeps zeroing back into there. He's trying to show you that there is a bullseye where to hit and who to start going after.
And Ferry was a pilot, right? Aviator?
Yep, he was a pilot.
I have him. We haven't gotten to the Rogers case yet, but it's an unsolved murder of two parents that were slaughtered, basically, and bisected, cut into pieces, stuffed in a fridge, and their entrails were left, I believe, in wash basins or oh gosh, I can't even think of it now.
Well, it's a lot like Black Dahlia.
Exactly. And lipstick.
Susan David.
Yes. Where she was in the storm drains. That's what it was. So as they left, they found pieces of her as the suspect left in different storm drains as he exited out of town, with them finally being at the railroad. The last, I guess, set was at the railroad. So yes, David Ferry actually is very close ties to Rogers, the one that is presumed to have been the murderer of his parents and then disappeared. But he was also an aviator and a pilot as well. So yes, it's all kind of wrapping itself one around the next.
This is probably what, and I met and have talked numerous times, even on Facebook, with Judith Berry Baker, which sometime you should bring her on, because this is a JFK connection. She was kind of nervous, like, I don't want to go to the Zodiac cases either. I'm going through enough. But, I'm
just following it. I didn't ask to go there. I didn't want to go there.
We're following the trails. So she knew David Ferry. And David Ferry was trying to confess what he was involved in, and he knew that this was going to cost him his life, especially when he was about to go to trial. And I've always had an interest in this cryptic image that was put, in newspapers of how his crime scene and room was found. And I found, because he placed things in certain areas himself.
Oh, so Ferry was murdered too, right?
Yeah, Ferry was murdered, but he knew about cryptic messages. So he knew to leave a cryptic communication somehow, and to try to solve his own killer. So But anyways, back to this letter. Um, it's saying something about E. Howard Hunt. It said, I'm just going to read what I put. It said that there was a lowercase e over H in Howard. So he's saying E. Howard. And then I said, well, this may logically be a reason for E. Howard Hunt being, and logically being the reason for Howard being mentioned twice. So the clues that stood out to me was that there was the dash and I think it's a semicolon. I'm trying to read my
a colon. Yeah, because we know that the zodiac has very long commas.
Yeah.
So I would think that this is probably the colon.
Yeah, so then it says, I figured it out as a dash, not a hyphen, and a colon by the etymology means dash, takeoff, colon means gate. This will lead to some people that are looking at this and say, oh, this is interesting. Anyways,
this is very interesting spacing on the letter as I'm looking at it. I knew that it was interesting to begin with, but now that you mentioned the lowercase e over the H, you can see these wide gaps and the squishing in of or Spencer. So they literally tried to make this letter appear this way, for sure. Okay,
so
go
anyways, anyways, in the etymology of dash, it means takeoff, and etymology of colon means gate. The key clue appears to me to be the Daltex gatekeeper for the conspirators, and that was Abraham Zapruder, and possibly his secretary, who had the keys to get into the Daltex, the gate.
What's Daltex?
Yeah, Daltex is one of the buildings that's right there, not too far from the Texas School Book Depository. That's one of the other buildings, and Daltex was a Daltex building. So let me just go on to read this.
Go ahead. Yes.
It says the secretary, Zapruder's secretary, had the keys. She was there with him to get into and in specific areas of the Dallas, Texas, or Daltex building. One witnessed a freight elevator operator called Dallas PD because a man was seen dashing out of the freight elevator and fled the Daltex building at the moments of shots and assassination. That man was last name Braden. So, anyways, that turned out to be Eugene Hale Eugene Hale Brading. That was one of his aliases.
Braden. So and we see that with Jack. Jack has lots of aliases. This is very normal. So yes, we would see that in this.
It goes on to say that guy Braden was arrested by Officer C.L. Lewis, and the capital C and the capital L stand out in the note and the letter. So he's saying something about CL, and he's trying to say, he's giving clues as to who's there and who to check, and because this is he's still trying to relay messages, I believe, to the Attorney General Bobby Kennedy, who was trying to find out, my God, they killed my brother, what's going on. So Jack was a part of that crew, and they're getting all kinds of information. But anyways, Braden is aka Brading, aka Bradley, and was interrogated but let go. He is with a long history, a known associate with Meyer Lansky. So that's Eugene Hale Brading. And he's linked to Ruby, at which their New Orleans office was next door to David Ferry, who was doing pretrial work for Carlos Marcello.
And then we can link Carlos Marcello back to having ins in the Dallas Police Department. So if this letter was sent from Jack back to the Dallas Police Department, it was ultimately going to end up in Carlos Marcello's
what we're doing right now as we're talking? We're going in a circle. So this letter is circling around the bullseye. He and his crew, but Jack is relaying the message, trying to tell what happened, who did it, and who do we need to follow the trail on. And Carlos Marcello is the one who says that in order to get at the heart of what they thought was a problem, which is Bobby Kennedy. They had to cut the dog's head off, and they saw JFK as the dog's head.
Well,
So
one of the things I picked up about the whole JFK thing was that he was primarily financed, I guess, if you will, by donations from the mob in order to get him into presidency, because they thought that he could help open Cuba back up and they could get their casinos back up and running and take back over Cuba as far as making money was concerned. And when that failed and didn't happen, they had no use for him at that point.
Well, that's where you're bringing up about the mob. I'm seeing through Jack's world. Okay, you have a lot of people don't want to hear this. You have the good mobsters and you have the bad mobsters. They were seeing as the bad mobsters that were way out of control. The good mobsters who've been running things with their families for centuries. Some people call it the cabal, whatever. They were trying to bring down the really bad, out of control people. Yes, they wanted to reopen Cuba, but they didn't want who they seen as really bad and out of control to be in charge. So Jack is working with this crew of the good-sided mobsters, because
the righteous villains.
The Kennedys have a history. We know it. We love them. That they have a history in running booze and linking with the mob and gangsters. So they learned their politics and how to run things, and did what they did. So, anyways, this is what we're looking at. You got the good mobsters going after the bad mobsters. You got. And let's just, I'm sorry, the people are going to be like, how could you really say that the Irishman was a good mobster? Well, the Irishman I've read part of his book, the I Paint Houses, that movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Who is the Irishman?
The Irishman is Frank Sheeran, and he's the guy who did confess in his best way, that he's raising his hand the best way he could, trying to tell that, yes, I did kill Hoffa, but I don't know where they put Hoffa's body. So he was going to get Hoffa's squad. But I'm seeing the Irishman doing amazing amount of things connected to Jack and his world, trying to just bring down people. And I'm Catholic, so I understand this. Catholics don't kill Catholics, even though Johnny Rosselli, which he's the Hollywood connection that's there in Dallas, Dealey Plaza. I met Tosh Plumlee. He says, I brought Johnny Rosselli there, but please don't say that he was shooting from the sewer. I said, he's been saying, before he was killed, he was saying 6 times, I shot JFK from the sewer with the prototype weapon. And then they did end up killing him before he went to testify to come clean. Because why? Bottom line, Catholics don't kill Catholics. And if they do, they confess. So you have the Irishman. He's Catholic. He didn't like what was going on, but they killed other Catholics. They killed 2 Catholics. So he says, well, he got to be friends with Hoffa, and I've read part of that book. He's basically saying that he killed Hoffa, but he's sorry.
Right. So where did we go with? So after we did this thing with the Marcello, where did we go? It says I see something in regards to the envelope and something you found from that.
See. It says that, and that's where he's saying something about Dallas police. And from what I learned going to the conferences, there are alleged 2 police officers who arrested somebody in or near the Daltex building. One is C.L. Lewis, but the second officer, Bond, yet I can't find whom he arrested. So he's trying to say something, there's people you need to look at the Dallas Police Department, because they let Brading go. And Brading was one of the shooters. There's he was also at Eugene Hale Brading was at the southern portion of Dealey Plaza as the shooting started. But anyway, so he's one of the shooters. And it says, lastly, for now, and what I sent to you, since Spencer is noted twice, another person surnamed Spencer is Sandra Spencer, who processed the JFK autopsy films. at the Navy DC Central Photo Lab. She was never questioned by the Warren Commission, and but in a 1997 deposition claims the ones she seen from the National Archives were not the ones she developed. So something happened there. So he's trying to tell you there's so much information in this envelope.
So maybe that comes back. Here's the funny thing. That comes back to my assertion that the Tibbetts murder, being shot from the rear, where sitting in his parked car and being shot from the rear of the head, if that was the doppelganger that they used, they wouldn't want an autopsy that revealed multiple gunshots to JFK's head, because their assertion this entire time has been there weren't multiple shooters. There was one shooter, right? That's the lie we've been told all this time.
Yeah, that's the people I met who were actually there, and one of them is known as the Babushka lady. That's Beverly Masagi, and hopefully, if you're listening to this, Beverly, I hope life finds you alive and well. She said since she was only like 17 or 18 when she was a witness, she was 20 feet from the car, and she said, I even told the Warren Commission those shots came from this direction and that direction towards the train tracks. She said that there was no shots that came from, because she was not too far from the Texas School Book Depository. She said the shots came from the front, and she said that every time she tried to tell her story, something happened. It got omitted out. In fact, if I remember correctly, it was after that time period she had to have an armed guard around her all the time when she got married. So because people were not liking the fact that she was going to keep telling the truth. She says, I did not see shots coming from there.
It's kind of
it's like from the car.
It's kind of like Chris Pickle in the case with Dennis Kaufman. Every time she attempted to air some episode, and she had great footage, she had great information, she had evidence to support and to put out there, and it would constantly be cut down to a 30-second bit where she was able to say a couple things that just made us look crazy rather than actually solidifying that we should be looked at. Yeah, it's frustrating.
So anyways, I kept on going on here, and it says, part of what I sent to you before October 20th, 2015, because there was an addendum. I sent you something like an addendum. Anyway,
Gotcha.
So far, jumping in about names, found that pertain to this small note and letter and envelope: Lawrence Howard, E. Howard, as in E. Howard Hunt, Sandra Spencer Tracy, one of the original Rat Pack that included Sinatra, Hepburn, Judy Garland, Peter Lawford, his in-law, and then who became JFK brother-in-law, and a few others. Burt Lancaster was saying so much, but and then I went on, I sent you something October 20th, 2015, that says the three tramps of Dealey Plaza: Chauncey Holt, Charles Harrelson, another Hollywood connection, by the way, because that's the father of Woody Harrelson.
Can we put that one up, Juan? I'm sorry, Harriette. I just want people to see so go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. Anyways, it says, I took some time to ponder on what the little item might really also be referring to, aside from the goodies I already found. And then I'm bringing up, it says it has a lot to do with the so-called three tramps' actual identities, and I confidently state none of the three tramps is E. Howard Hunt. So let's see. I'll just read what I sent you. It says most of the words are starting out with capital letters as if to point out that this has to do with names. The word Czech etymology basically means bill, perhaps means by chance. And Spencer is an old, expensive UK-style men's double-breasted jacket, a tweed blazer. Now I'm getting tongue-tied.
Right.
Cold, and then etc. And the actor Lee Howard wears one as the Scarlet Pimpernel, which Lee Oswald is said to have identified with, not to exclude that Lee Oswald is found in an anagram of the actor's name, when you do Lee Howard, it comes out IR Lee H. Oswald, something like that. Wow. Anyways, Howard is over Spencer, but it's also known as in between perhaps and Spencer. These formations match up to eyewitnesses seeing the three tramps with Officer Bill, and I forgot his last name. And then it says a second Dallas PD officer as they were taken into custody off the train in the boxcar and then escorted from the train tracks area while pictures were taken. And I'm saying that here are the names that fit: Chauncey Holt, Chance. The name Chauncey means basically sounds like Chance. Charles Harrelson in the Spencer, and he was wearing a Spencer like the Scarlet Pimpernel. He was wearing what is called a Spencer. Anyways, and now known to be actor Woody Harrelson's dad, that was Charles Harrelson, Lawrence Howard. All three of them have ties to Meyer Lansky, in turn to Carlos Macello and Hollywood. And declassified info ties them to Dealey Plaza, not to leave out the fact that Chauncey Holt admitted he was there once the pictures came out. So, I mean, we can go on and on and on, but
yeah, it's going to keep on going back to the same place.
Even this is saying if you put the words there in a certain line, and this is reminding me, I had to look up how could he be in the Spencer, and then there are three tramps who went to look like they went shopping at the Salvation Army, and you would find things like from the 40s and the 50s there. So how, unless it was also staged in part by Hollywood, Hollywood had access to these types of clothing. So
right, we've got about 8
Hollywood connection again.
We got about 8 minutes left today, and I know that I just flipped to one that you are talking about, the known or believed Zodiac victim names, initials, anagram out to a message.
Definitely.
So you covered that as part of this. Do you have that in your book?
Definitely. I just found it was interesting, and that's where, again, I have to go to some parts of what this was something that Lawrence Swearingen was doing, and he had a whole book he got a couple of books out of this. So this gave validity to attempt that. So, yeah. Well, I can go on and on about David Faraday. There's things I learned later on why David Faraday was, but anyways.
Right. Yeah. We'll cover that when we get to the Zodiac, but I thought this pertains to a message. Yes.
It keeps on going back to this same thing as David Arthur Faraday, DAF could be also FDA, Betty Lou Jensen, or BLJ, can come out as LBJ. Darlene Elizabeth Farron, DEF, can also be Fed. Michael Renaud Majot, MRM or MMR. And then Brian C. Hartnell, BCH. Anyways, it just goes on to, all these come out as something really strange. You got I'm trying to read my own writing. It says DAL for Donna Ann Lass is DALRN. So, and then that says in here, it says, please note that PLS, which is Paulie Stein, is also the airport code for Providencial Cialis Airport, which is not far from Cuba. And TLS is airport code for Toulouse Airport, France. And DAL is also the code for Love Field, Dallas. So, and then I came up with what I thought was interesting. So when you combine all those names, initials, and anagram them, slightly adjust them, I came out with Fed, as in Federal Reserve Bank, research data, measles, mumps, rubella, vaccine, biochem hazard for shipping, compliance safety administration data went through Providencialis Airport, possibly TLS, which is Toulouse Airport, and Dow Love Field using radar navigation. I just came up with something like that. That was also alluding to this letter in a strange way, because the letter has, and if you can bring it up for everybody to look at, you can barely see it. It's over the stamp. It's saying fight tuberculosis. Hold on, I'm looking at it here. It's got something over the stamp, and it's about fighting tuberculosis and some kind of some kind of shot. So, and there's a microdot in there. And so this, in a weird way, goes back to when you anagram all those initials. I found it interesting that came out to something that has to do with what was going on in 1963, how they were trying to fight tuberculosis and lung cancer and things of that nature, with the American Lung Association.
And of course, this stamp would have been applied by the post office, no doubt. The post office.
I'm pretty sure he faked it. I'm pretty sure he faked this too. Jack's World had access to even faking envelopes. So
absolutely, he had postal keys he turned in.
So this was just this was just a way of sending clues as to what to look for, and I may at some point try to anagram the rest of that out to see what's in there. But American Lung Association and fight tuberculosis, and even the stamp is going to yield probably just more details as to who to look at. And in my head, I can already see it's going to say something about HAFA, which is the North American International Brotherhood Teamsters Union, and there's a fight against them.
Right, and let me let everybody know the connection. Jack actually had 2 master postal keys in his possession when he mailed it as the Zodiac in a card. Now, the Zodiac was capable of getting his letters around, even though they weren't properly addressed or postaged, so many wondered about that. Also, some of those communications had been held for 7 to 10 years before they were actually mailed and arrived. So we see some funky happenings with the post office. So I tend to believe that, yes, they could have forged and come up with just about anything they wanted.
I can tell you, as he was in the Get Hoffa squad, he had access to stamps and where they originated from. And I mean, it was an amazing crew that were trying to just help relay cryptic messages so the world wouldn't know everything that was going on, especially the people that they were after. So I'm finding so many things. I've done hundreds of these since then, but this is, I think, the first big one that I did.
Well, and we are going to be looking at stamps as part of my presentation and examination of the communications. We're going to see how those stamps run in tandem with crimes and communications that are occurring in these crimes, and how they're identical to what the Zodiac is using at one point in time or another. And that really wraps itself up around it really quite nicely.
And why the newspapers being used? Even Black Dahlia was using them, Susan Degnan era.
All of them listed it as an extortion case instead of a murder case. How is it an extortion when we're dealing with a serial killer?
Well, here's something else that's going to be left for people to ponder.
We got about 1 minute for you to go over that.
Say this.
Okay.
If you look at the movie, my favorite movie is National Treasure Book of Secrets.
Mine too. That's one of my favorites.
And so they're saying that the president's secret book is the eagle is holding a scroll, like a scroll of paper. If you look close, it looks like it's a scroll of newspaper. So, and I was looking at that recently, and I said, "Oh my God, the Zodiac and people he's working with is using the newspaper industry to send things back to the presidents, not just Nixon, not just LBJ. LBJ was also involved in things too." So,
I think that has actually been a method that has been used by the CIA, by the mob. I mean, the newspaper and putting in personal ads or private ads or want ads or all of those things. That's something that the world already knows about. But we're at the end of our time right now, Harriette. We can pick this back up at a later date. But I want to sign off, tell everybody to have a great weekend. Thank you for being here. I absolutely enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Oh,